Thank you all for joining us today. So we will be going over Oncor's Clean Fleet Partnership Program. I'm Jared Wright, an air quality planner here at the North Central Texas Council of Governments. I'm also with Dallas-Fort Worth Clean Cities. And we just want to give a brief overview of who we are and what we do before we get started and pass it off to Oncor. So just if y'all aren't aware, we are here at the Council of Governments, the regional planning agency for the region you see on the map there, and also the Metropolitan Planning Organization for that black boundary on the map. And then our third hat that we like to say we wear is our Dallas-Fort Worth Clean Cities. So Clean Cities is a national program from the Department of Energy. And we also have sister coalitions across the state. For those of you not in our region, there's Clean Cities organizations in Houston, Austin, and San Antonio. And we just represent the Dallas-Fort Worth Clean Cities organization. And quickly want to go over what we do as Dallas-Fort Worth Clean Cities. So we have three main focus areas on our team of fleet and driver guidance and planning, which is the focus of this webinar today will be on that arm of the team. Then we also do infrastructure planning and readiness and energy integration. And so the fleet, driver guidance and planning part of our team helps to support the transition to zero emission vehicles and other alternative fuel technologies. And we do this by assisting deployment by helping local fleets identify funding, promoting funding, and also sometimes we provide funding ourselves as the Council of Governments. And then the infrastructure side of our team with the main goal of increasing equitable access to EV infrastructure and ensuring local governments are prepared for the upcoming increase in local EV adoption, as well as reducing any barriers, delays, and cost in infrastructure development for zero emission vehicles. So that includes electric vehicles as well as fuel cell electric vehicles. So we are also very interested in publicly accessible infrastructure for heavy duty, medium and heavy duty zero emission vehicles, including fuel cell and electric vehicles. And then the last leg of our team here, energy integration, works to minimize negative electric grid impacts associated with transportation electrification, and also works to increase availability of renewable fuels and improve resilience against fuel and energy interruptions. And we also want to highlight quickly what our program that just opened, the North Central Texas Council of Governments 2023 Heavy Duty Zero Emission Vehicle Infrastructure Call for Partners. And so we just opened this past couple of weeks, and the deadline to submit is April 7th. So we have a call for partners. We're looking for project teams to apply for upcoming competitive federal or state grant funding for publicly accessible zero emission vehicle infrastructure for medium and heavy duty zero emission vehicles. And this could include the upcoming charging and fueling infrastructure discretionary grant program. So some more details there. You can go to our funding page at NCTCOG.org/AQ funding and see some more information as well as the documents. And we'll be posting later today a teaming list that includes organizations that responded looking for partners to apply, as well as the FAQ from questions we've received since opening the call for partners. And then last but not least here, I want to highlight some currently open funding opportunities. So the first three rows here are tax credits that opened earlier this year. Tax exempt organizations are eligible to receive these tax credits. It's not just for tax paying organizations. So the first is the Clean Vehicle Tax Credit, which is for light duty plug-in electric or fuel cell vehicles. And depending on the vehicle specs, you can receive up to $2,500 to $7,500 rebate on those vehicles. There's also the commercial EVs and fuel cell electric vehicle tax credit, and that will fund a federal tax credit up to $7,500 for vehicles under 14,000 pounds gross vehicle weight rating, and up to $40,000 for vehicles over 40,000 pounds. And there's also a 30% infrastructure tax credit. And then a couple other programs here I want to highlight. There's the Energy Efficiency and Conservation Block Grant, or EECBG program. This is non-competitive grants that already has predetermined allocated amounts for local governments for energy efficiency and conservation projects, and that could include electric vehicles or EV infrastructure. And the deadline to submit the pre-award sheet is coming soon on April 28th. And then a couple programs here were recently opened by the TCEQ. The Emissions Reduction Incentive Grant has a deadline to apply by April 4th, and that will fund repower or replacement of select non-road equipment in the ozone non-attainment areas in Texas. And then just opened last week is the Government Alternative Fuel Fleet Grant Program, or GAFF, and the deadline to apply is May 16th, and that will fund new purchase or lease of alternative fuel or electric vehicles And the funding amount is predetermined by the TCQ all the way down to 17,000 for the smallest light duty vehicles, up to 80,000 for Class 8 vehicles. And then up to 10% of the award can be used for refueling infrastructure for these vehicles. And that's all we had. And before I hand it over to Oncor, our contact info is here. If you have any questions or anything you'd like to reach out to us about, please contact us. And also, if you're a local fleet that has not submitted your annual survey, please do so by this Friday, March 24th. And I'll pass it off to Jennifer at Oncor.
All right. Thank you, Jared. Can everybody hear me? Awesome. Well, my name is Jennifer Deaton. I'm the manager of corporate strategy and electrification at Oncor Electric Delivery. Thank you so much for having me. I'm super excited to walk you through Oncor's new fleet partnership program we have named Oncor Evolution. So I want to walk you through some of the history that created this program and why Oncor decided to create Evolution. So basically, there's two forks in the road really for this program. The first fork is your customer facing side of it. We really want to understand, what does fleet electrification look like in Oncor service territory over the next several coming years? And how does Oncor proactively prepare for this potential load growth? And also from a customer perspective, how does Oncor reach and communicate directly with these fleet customers? And how do we help bring them along through this journey and help make their transition from internal combustion engines to EVs as seamless and headache-free as possible? And us at Oncor and a lot of the other utilities are really thinking hard about how we can make that transition as seamless for the fleet customers as we can. So this program, Evolution, is really our attempt at answering a lot of those questions. So the first thing that we want Evolution to accomplish is to provide a really targeted information and outreach for Oncor fleet customers. I will go into exactly what all of that means in just a second, but that is the huge that's the huge goal of Evolution, is to really contact fleet customers and really bring them information and education as proactively and upfront as we can, so that when these fleet customers are making business decisions, they really are making an educated business decision, at least from the grid perspective. Also, from an internal perspective, we really are trying to do a lot of data analysis on grid growth, specifically related to electrification in the transportation industry, to see exactly where on the grid we need to start looking at proactively building out infrastructure to account for fleet electrification. And that's on, the Oncor side, so that we can start making really data-driven conversations, whether that is, internally with where we need to build out some more infrastructure for this coming EV load. It is typically and historically been a very difficult thing to quantify. And that is one of the pieces of the Evolution program, is to help Oncor quantify what fleet electrification means to the grid, what kind of what amount of load is that going to put onto the grid, and specifically where on our service territory is this load growth going to occur. So basically on the customer side, Evolution has a portal that is going to be connected to our oncor.com/EV website. The customer will go to the portal and fill out as much information as they have about their fleet electrification plans. The first section is really basic customer contact information, so that we can contact you and ask you questions. And I will say, we're going to go through the portal here in just a little bit, and I'll walk you through how to fill it out and what all the things mean. But I will be, very open. If you do not know some of the things on that's being asked on the enrollment form, that's perfectly okay. If you're not that far along in your electrification journey, that's perfectly okay too. Just leave it blank, and we can still have a really robust conversation with wherever you're at, whether you're really far along in the process or you're not far along at all. It is not geared towards any progression in your fleet electrification plan. It's for everybody that is even thinking about it. It's open to everybody. So we're going to go through the portal here in just a few minutes, and I'll walk you through it, and we can stop and you can ask questions or anything, but it is a very basic enrollment form. So after you enroll in the program, I will get a notification And then I will reach out to you and we can set up a meeting and I can either come visit you at your office. You can come visit me at my office, or we can do, a WebEx and we can do an online session. Some of the things that we're going to cover in the program are all things Oncor related. Anything you could ever dream to think about from Oncor perspective with fleet electrification, we're going to dive into as deep or as little as you would like. The way that I kind of like to think about this is, I went around to a bunch of the other departments within Oncor, and I really created kind of a TED Talk of Oncor 101 for fleet managers. And it really reminds me of whenever you're in kindergarten and you have stations and you go to like block station and then like the crayon station and like the paint station. That's exactly what we're going to do. We're going to walk through Oncor in that kind of a fashion. So the onus really is taken off of the customer to have to navigate through Oncor's internal processes. I'm trying to bring all of that information to you upfront and proactively. I'll provide you links to every single one of these things. If you're either interested in getting more information, I can provide you contact information and I can provide you links to that portal or their website in that department. We'll go as deep into it as you'd like. Or if that's not something you're interested, we can just skip that section altogether. So some of the things that we're going to talk about are, customer relations. How does Oncor bill? That's something that causes some confusion sometimes. How to read your bill? How does Oncor bill? How does Oncor's demand charges work? How do Oncor tariffs work? What does your journey from basically using electricity as a fuel source? What does that look like for you on your billing? What are some things that you can do to make the impact less? Things like that. We have an entire section of the conversation that's just around billing, how to read the bill, how to understand how we charge so that you can make the most intentional impact on your electric bill. We do talk a little bit about distribution planning. How does Oncor grow the grid? I do know that there is a lot of a lot of people don't really understand how the grid has grown. We do not just proactively build a bunch of infrastructure and it sits there with a ton of potential capacity. That is not really how we are regulated as a utility. So how is it grown? We go into all of that. How we're regulated, how the grid has grown. Some of the information that we're collecting from this program is intentionally collected to try to make a data-driven argument for the areas in our service territory that do need to be grown for potential fleet electrification purposes. We'll go into distributed generation. If you're interested in any type of solar installation, solar panels, on-site battery storage, or any type of interconnections, we have an entire department within Oncor that handles all of those things. If you're interested in vehicle to grid, that also is going to go through the interconnection process. So we're going to talk really in depth about that, who to contact, what to have prepared when you do contact them, things to think through, we can provide some use cases for some customers that have gone through this and what they experienced and kind of provide you their black eyes up front so that you don't get one. There's a lot of things that we can share with you and try to help you make really intelligent business decisions. We go into energy efficiency, smart charging, energy conservation, consumption patterns. And then we do have a pilot that we're running right now that we're going to get into. My colleague Josh Minter is here. He's going to cover in a little bit more in depth the energy efficiency program, but also specifically the energy efficiency fleet pilot that we will be kicking off along with the Evolve program. We're going to talk a lot about that. Talk about, what are ways you can charge your fleet that have the least impact on your bill. Those things are really, really important. And I think that we can provide you a lot of information in that regard. We'll go into project management, serve new added load, construction and design process. I get a lot of questions about the construction and design process. How long does it take to design my project? How long does it take to construct the project once it is designed? What do I need to know before I go into that process? There's a lot of information in this section of the discussion. We bring a lot of information up front about supply chain constraints and things like that will help you plan accordingly. So for example, a lot of these types of projects that we're seeing right now require 3-phase pad mount transformers. and we're currently experiencing about a 47-week lead time on those types of transformers. So I really like to gather a lot of that information from our design partners and our construction partners so that I can proactively provide that to our fleet customers that are thinking about doing this, so that they know that they probably want to start in this journey with Oncor maybe even sooner than they had expected, because we can't order your transformer until your design is complete. So it's definitely, it definitely can be a process. Now the industry, it's industry-wide supply chain issues with some types of equipment, specifically the pad mounted transformers. So I'll give you all of that information that we're seeing in the industry, but specifically for Oncor service territory, so that whenever you're planning your projects, you have that information up front and you can say, oh, well, you know, Oncor told me I'm going to need this transformer and this is the lead time, so that you can kind of reverse engineer your schedule accordingly. We don't want you to find that out later. We would rather you know all of that information up front. And then we can kind of go into rep relations, the difference between a rep, which is a retail electric provider, and Oncor. What are the roles and responsibilities for each? We break that down and make it really simple. You know, when to call Oncor and when to call your rep. What is the rep's roles and responsibilities versus Oncor's? Sometimes there's a lot of confusion and we get a lot of calls in our call center and we have to redirect to the rep and vice versa. So I'll lay all of that out so you know exactly who to call when certain things happen and who to ask questions to, and things like that. We also can walk you through a couple of case studies that we've done for some other fleets that have already transitioned. We'll walk you through what that design process looked like for them, some of the construction choices that they made, some of the metering choices that they made. We can walk you through some of the like pre and post billing that they were seeing. You know, we just redacted a lot of the information, but we can show you kind of what the impact was to that organization once they went from X amount of internal combustion vehicles in their fleet to electric vehicles in their fleet and what that looked like for them. So we can talk about all of these things. Or you can cherry pick and say, hey, we're not really interested in this or this. Please elaborate on these types of things. This is where we're interested. So after you fill out the enrollment form, I will contact you and we can just have a quick discussion on what type of information you're interested in, where you're at in your project, and then we'll go from there. So the other half of evolution is the analysis piece that I was explaining to you. This is definitely more of an internal piece. This is not going to be an external facing analysis, but I do want to share openly that Oncor is working on these types of analysis. So what I am doing is I'm building a model that helps Oncor understand where the fleets are on our service territory and what their likelihood is to electrify. So the model kind of, you can see in the graphic here, I have all the fleets on our service territory scored essentially on their likelihood to electrify based on the makeup and the demographic of their fleet and what we're seeing in the market. So basically, I'm trying to pinpoint where on our service territory the fleets are and the ones that are most likely to electrify. And then I'm overlaying our capacity, transformer and feeder capacity on top of that, and finding the intersections between fleets that are likely to electrify and then places where we have, you know, maybe 85% capacity, et cetera. We're still working on the, you know, the dimensions of all of the ratings and things like that. But essentially what I'm looking for are what I consider high risk areas, places where that are going to see a lot of electrification. And I want to go ahead and provide that data over to our distribution planning department really proactively and say, hey, based off of our analysis, this is where I'm seeing the highest either zip codes or feeders of load growth for EV specifically. So that's the internal how to grow the grid, what's Oncor doing with fleet electrification. That's kind of what we're doing on the analysis side. So I also get that question a lot. How is Oncor preparing for the fleet electrification? So that is the model that we're building and we're currently working on along with the customer side of evolution. So I'm going to stop there. Does anybody have any questions? If anybody online has any questions, they can jump their question into the chat. All right, well, I'm going to pass it over to Josh for a couple of slides. He's going to cover an overview of our energy efficiency program and specifically our fleet charging study.
Good afternoon, everyone. I hope everyone can hear me clearly. Thank you very much, Jennifer. So, like Jennifer said earlier, there are so many layers to evolution, and I'm going to speak about the part with energy efficiency. So first of all, we have to understand what energy efficiency means. And in this context, it's energy conservation. And so this is basically trying to find the best way to save energy. And a good example is turning lights off to save energy. And the best tool for energy conservation is energy efficiency. So energy efficiency is using the technology that requires less energy to perform the same function. And a good example of that is installing efficient lighting. So we have an energy efficiency department, and I'm going to go through the process of how you can get involved and learn about our programs. First of all, you go and you find what program it is that you're looking for. If it's lighting, if it's HVAC, you find a service provider who does installations on that measure. And after the service provider has installed, he submits what he installed and what was saved. And based on the savings, we then give an incentive to basically promote energy efficiency and incentivize being more energy efficient in practices. So here I'm going to list a few of our programs. Start with the commercial program. We have the commercial standard offer program that has a bunch of measures like lighting, HVAC, and it's usually on large commercial facilities. We have the commercial solar program where we incentivize commercial solar based on offsetting peak. We have commercial load management, winter commercial load management. We have the small business program, which is more focused on small businesses outside the DFW area. This is more of a retrofit program. And we have the commercial midstream, which focuses on HVAC midstream. And we have the SEM, strategic energy management. So the next group is the residential programs. We have the home energy efficiency program, low income weatherization program, residential solar, which we incentivize solar and batteries, targeted low income program, residential load management, retail products platform, and new homes construction. And as you can see, we focus on businesses, homes, and schools for all these programs. So just to dive in a little bit with the commercial part of this, the commercial standard offer program is our biggest program. We incentivize available or new, we incentivize for available new or existing facilities. Project savings, we use deemed savings, and projects, we also use measurement and verification. This is the tool we use to derive savings in which we would incentivize. And some of the measures, as you can see here, involve lighting, chillers, motors, and refrigeration. And now for the main event, the MEV, which is the Managed EV Charging Study. So we place an emphasis on study because we want to learn more about how the impacts of the growing EV charging in our service territory is affecting the grid. And from an energy efficiency standpoint, we want to learn how we can be more efficient. And so the objective of this is to provide educational opportunities for commercial premises with EV fleets and or EV charging locations. This is basically to study the peak demand of these areas and find a way to reduce that. How can one be eligible for this study? So the commercial customer must have a valid Easy ID, which is in the Oncor service territory, must be able to deploy, basically let us control 5 EV chargers, or at least 2 medium heavy duty electric fleets. So when you want to enroll in this, we would ask, do you have access to about at a minimum of 5 EVSEs or 2 medium heavy duty vehicles? And an example of that would be 2 school buses, big EV vehicles you find in airports. So we would want an understanding that this would be submitted to the program. Requirements, we would have participants agree to a minimum of once a month touch point with Oncor. This is so that we have an ongoing conversation on the research of what is happening. We would want to see changes, we would want to perform strategies, and we would require at least once a month touch point. Now, the fun part about the incentives, if you enroll, you can earn up to about $10,000 in incentives. There's different thresholds, but the minimum, like I said earlier, is 5 EV chargers. And there's also a participation incentive, which has a max of $10,000 per location, up to 3 locations. So the maximum incentive you can receive for 1 location is $25,000. And the benefits, and some of them Jennifer did mention, is just potentially understanding strategies that can decrease utility costs for commercial premises due to managed fleet charging, and just understanding and creating baselines for different commercial facilities. And if you have any questions on this managed EV charging study through energy efficiency, please feel free to contact me. My contact information is up here, and I will be more than happy to explain more of this to you. And with that, I will pass it back to Jennifer. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much, Josh. We're very, very excited about that program because it really does a lot for the customer, but it also does a lot for Oncor. Okay, just make sure everybody can see that. All right, so our next section of the presentation, I'm going to walk you through the portal. Again, it's very simple. It's very, I think it's very user-friendly. Please feel free to disagree with me and send me notes so I can make it better if you do disagree with me. But I think it's pretty straightforward, but we're going to walk through it. And if you have any questions, just, drop them in the chat or unmute. Happy to answer any questions. So this is the login page for the portal. So basically the login section that you see up here is going to be for returning users. So once you've already enrolled, if you want to come back and edit anything that you've ever done, or you want to come back and look, or there's actually a chat function in the portal. Once you're logged in, we can chat. If you want to send me a note or ask me a question, we can chat through the portal if that's what you prefer. But the login section is here if you're already an existing enroller. So there's 2 sections of enrollment. One is enrollment as a fleet representative, and one is enrollment as a program partner. So the difference is the fleet representative is somebody that has a fleet that they are transitioning. So that is in our experience so far, the majority of the people that have reached out to us to talk to us are going to fall under this fleet representative. They're actively transitioning a fleet over to electric vehicles. The program partner is basically kind of anybody else that doesn't necessarily own a fleet that they're transitioning, but they still have a very vested interest in this topic and they want to be included in the conversations. So some of the people that kind of fall under this program partnership are charger installation companies, charging as a service companies, those types of companies that that really want to be a part of the conversation and be a part of the program, but aren't necessarily transitioning their own personal fleet. So there's a little bit of information about, kind of what we would consider, fleet managers versus, not a fleet manager, but you're still interested in all these kinds of things that I just, went through in the previous section of the presentation. You can kind of decide, where you think that you will fall in the program. And if you're confused, just feel free to call me and we can walk through it. But for today's purposes, we're gonna roll as a fleet representative. Oh my gosh. Maybe. Okay, yes, we are. Okay. So basically, when you enroll, this is the pretty simple enrollment form. We do not share any of your information that you provide with us on this site. I know a lot of these electrification plans can be kind of proprietary, so please, though this information does not go anywhere, we don't use it for anything other than to understand your plans so that we can make sure that we can serve you as efficiently as possible. So basically, this top section right here is all contact information. So we know who you are and how to contact you. Your organization's name and address, city, state, zip code, work phone, first name, last name, your title, email address, contact number. Now the user ID, that's going to be whatever you put into this field is going to be the user ID that you log back into your portal with. So right now it doesn't exist. So whatever you put in here, and then once you submit it, remember that because that's what you're going to use to get back into the portal. Organization type, whatever your organization is. And if you're going through this and you don't see your organization, please feel free to reach out to me. I can very quickly add it so that you're included in the dropdown effectively. Your total fleet size, whether it's small, medium, and large size fleet. And then this one is just information about kind of where you're at in the process. Are you just starting your electrification journey and looking for information? You like more information on electrification and you already have some projects to discuss, or you're ready to discuss a project kickoff. That really kind of tells me who to bring to the table. Like if you're in that third category, ready to kick off a project, I'm going to bring, operations with me to your meeting so that we can have a little bit more detailed conversation about your projects. Especially if you have locations and things like that, we can go ahead and do capacity analysis and potentially maybe even some cost analysis, depending on how much information you actually have. It will make our meeting a lot more productive for us and for you. So that drop down right there just kind of gives me a gauge on where you're at and what level of information to bring and who to bring to the meeting. These next three questions are really to gauge your interest in some of our other offerings. For example, solar, battery storage, vehicle to grid interconnections, Oncor energy efficiency programs, and then the EV study. So whether or not you click yes or no or not sure on those also kind of gives me an indication on who to bring and what information to bring to the meeting. If you're really interested in the energy efficiency study, Josh might join us in the meeting. Or if you're interested in the solar battery vehicle to grid integrations, somebody from our DG team might come. So that really just helps me kind of tailor the meeting to whatever your needs are. So that all of that section is pretty self-explanatory, I think. And you can see only a couple of aspects of the top section are required. I tried to make as little of the fields required as possible because I don't want people that aren't that far along in their planning to feel like they can't come and talk to us. Because it's really important that you do start talking to us as early as you can. We still have great information to provide you and we might be able to help. So I didn't want those people to be to get out of the program because they just didn't feel like they were far enough along. So this next section, based off what I just said, is completely voluntary. If you have any of this section information, please fill it out. Even if you are not 100% sure, it's better to start with something than nothing. But this is the section where you're going to actually add kind of more detailed information about your fleet electrification plans. So for example, we'll add new. So we're going to add a new fleet location. So let's pretend you're Amazon. And you have a South Dallas location that you're going to be electrifying. You can call this location name South Dallas location, or whatever it is your company calls that location. Your ESID, if you have that, it makes it easy for us to find your premise. It makes this easy for us to find your account and things like that if you know it. If you don't, that's okay, it's not required. And if you don't know where to get it, I can help you. The property type, whether you own or lease, that's also really helpful information for us. And then the owner name or the lease owner name. The location of that fleet, specifically where that fleet is going to be charging is what we're interested in. The city, state, and zip code of the charging for that fleet. And then do you expect to remain at the facility for 10 or more years? And how long do you expect to remain at the facility? This is a good question to kind of steer a conversation, but also it's really important to try to provide the utility as much information about your long-term plans as possible, for a couple of reasons. If you have, let's say, a 2-year and then a 5-year plan and then a 10-year plan, but the 10-year plan is like really kind of wishy-washy, we're not really sure about that, please just let's just have a conversation about the whole thing, because for a couple of reasons. One, again, it helps us understand what our customers are thinking in terms of fleet electrification, so that when I go have conversations with distribution planning or transmission planning or some of our other internal partners, I can have an honest conversation with what I'm seeing in the industry and what our customers are saying their 5- and 10-year plans are. I can document that and actually provide them some data on those things. But secondly, when it comes to, design and construction, if we know what your, 5- and 6-year plan is, we can right size your equipment accordingly and not build to the 2-year plan. We want to, if as much as possible, we want to build to the 5- or 6-year plan, especially considering some of the supply chain constraints we're having with transformers and things like that. So if you do have a multi-year phased out plan, let us know what the whole plan is, because it is much easier for both parties to only build it one time. So yeah, that's just really, really great information. Don't ever think, oh, well, that's too far out, or they don't care about that right now, or, oh, we don't really know what we're going to do. Let's just try to have an open conversation about the whole thing so that we can make sure that the equipment that goes out there is right sized and it can, stay out there for a long period of time, and that we're not having crews rip up your concrete multiple times for no reasons, etc. And the section down here is the number of internal combustion engines that are in your fleet currently. And then if you have a percentage transition plan, that's good for us to know. For example, if you have a ESG goal of 5% transition every year for the next 6 years, etc. So that's really helpful for us to understand. And then we can quantify that in some of our modeling. The number of planned chargers at this location, and then the number of existing EVs that you have at that location, and then the number of level 2 ports and DCFC ports. So all of that is really, really good information for us to know. We can actually do some load calculations off of that for that premise, and try to understand, what the load growth at that premise could potentially look like with the numbers that you gave us. And then this section here is you can actually add the specific type of vehicles and chargers that you're going to have at that location to that location. So you're firstly putting in the fleet location, and then secondly, you're putting in the types of chargers and the types of vehicles that are going to be at that location, which is a great information for us to know as well. So this section right here is tied to a database. So you can kind of cheat and type in the model that you have, and it will pull up a couple of options. and you can click, let's say this is the lightning that you're going to get, for example. It will pre-populate a lot of some of these categories for you, the range and those kinds of things. So if you can, if it's available, you can try to look it up in the database because it'll save you a little time. And then the number of electric vehicles, so how many, in this example, how many lightnings are going to be at that fleet charging location. Estimated daily miles for that vehicle, the operating days, you know, if it's a Monday through Friday operation, it's a Saturday, Sunday operation, et cetera. And then the hours of operation for that fleet. This is also good information for the charging study. Josh is shaking his head because it really helps us understand what kind of operation we're working with. Or is this a 24/7 operation where, you know, we really just are trying to get an understanding of when you're going to be charging. Are you going to be charging on peak or off peak? Do you have an option to change up your charging behaviors? So that's kind of why that's in there, so that we can really have a conversation about best practices for charging. And then this last section is on the EDSE, the equipment type, which is also important because we can do load calculations off of that as well. So the charger type and the charger manufacturer, the number of chargers, hour of charging per day, and the estimated charge times, and whether it's like a public use or workplace employee use, or this is for your fleet charging. So again, you can see that none of that is required. If you have information to that level, it's extremely helpful for us. And if you do not, that is perfectly okay. So that is, I'm going to cancel this because it's not going to save. That's the entire enrollment form. You can fill out as much of it as you can or as little of it as you would like. And we still can have a really great conversation either way. So that is the entire Oncor Evolve program. It's our fleet EV focused program. And I have talked for a really long time. So if anybody has any questions, I am more than happy to answer any questions. And the questions I don't want to answer, I'll make Josh answer.
Lori? Thank you, Jennifer and Josh. I am super excited about the incentive program for managed EV charging. Do y'all have a cap on how many participants you're looking for? Because, I mean, since you're providing incentive money, I assume that the budget isn't infinite there.
That is correct. It is not infinite. We do wish it was. Josh?
So yes, for the study, for the first year, we are only bringing in 10 participants. That's the max. And our budget is, like Jennifer said, not infinite. So there will be a certain point where we reach those 10 participants where we would call it off for the year. So it's 10 participants. So it could be Walmart, Amazon, 10 of those. And each participant has as many locations, but we only incentivize up to 3.
No, you're fine.
And we have a flyer. And we have a flyer that I will be sharing out for more information.
Okay, we have a question. Which percentage of EV fleets do you think would fill out the form? I don't know, that's a great question. We haven't launched it yet, but I'm hoping a lot. I spend a lot of time talking to different fleet managers, specifically with cities and ISDs and everything. And the feedback that I've gotten so far and from the Clean Cities team here has been pretty positive. You know, I think that the use case for this is really needed. I think that I also spend a lot of time talking to other utilities across the country and across the state, and programs like this, I think that the industry is really asking for a more open partnership with the utilities. And this is Oncor's effort to try to make sure that that communication line is very open and very easily accessible to all of our customers. Dallas ISD will be enrolling. Yay. That makes me very excited. Oh, launch date. We will be launching the portal next week. It's almost across the finish line. We just have one more little design thing that we're working on. But I was hoping we could do a email blast once it's live, and we'll send out the link, and anybody who's interested is welcome to join. What metrics are you using to identify fleets that are more apt to electrify in your study? Well, this could go into another hour. That is a complicated question. I will do my best to make sure this is like a 2-second answer. So basically what we did in the modeling was we had 2 data sources. One of the data sources is for registration data from the state of Texas. And that basically gave us a baseline of all of the fleets that are in our service territory. And then it gave us some demographic data for those fleets. And then we basically used a scoring system that I created and with peers to quantify that. So basically a good example that I like to use is we really used the makeup of the fleet to try to understand whether that industry is really moving in the EV space. So for example, if your fleet was made up of cement trucks, you would score lower on the electrification factor than, let's say, your fleet was made up of garbage trucks. We've seen garbage trucks move in this EV space pretty readily, and we have not yet seen, let's say, cement trucks move in the EV space yet. So it's a bunch of things like that. I think there's 30 factors that weigh into the electrification factor scoring. So it's a lot of things like that. And nobody wants me to go into 30 different factors, but that's a good example. The dump truck versus the cement truck. And that's kind of how we weighted them. We are working right now to bring in another data source that provides demographic data, and we're going to overlay that with our registration data to really beef up the AI that's in our electrification factor scoring. So that's actually my nerdy favorite thing to do, is that building that model. Does that make sense, Chris? Great, thank you. Thanks for the question. I love getting that question.
I got a question.
Sure.
If we've got a shovel-ready project pertaining to refuse trucks, what's your timeline on funding sources?
Sorry, what was what sources?
If I have a shovel-ready project, meaning I'm ready now,
Yeah.
what's your timeline on your incentive
Oh.
dollars?
Josh is coming to the mic.
So the moment you present at least 5 EV chargers that we would be able to use as a strategy, you get up to $2,500 to $10,000 just for enrolling. And then throughout the annual year, based on strategies performed, we give $2,500 per strategy, up to 4 strategies. So the 10,000 max from enrolling, and then up to 10,000 for participating throughout the year. You would get the enrollment part of it probably 2 weeks to a month after, because we would have to do site investigation, make sure that what you did submit is a valid site, and based on that, you should be able to get the enrollment incentive within 2 weeks to a month.
Does that answer your question? Good. Okay, cool. Very good. Okay. My company is interested in performing EPC and EPCM and installations and maintenance. What next steps can we take after signing up? Yeah, I think that you would be a great candidate for our program partner section of the program. So I would say just sign up as a program partner, and then you and I can have a conversation about what that means for our partnership. And yeah, we'll go from there. It's really going to be kind of a case by case basis, depending on what you're looking for and what we can provide. Will approved program partners for EV charger installations be listed on your website for residential commercial sites that are looking to add them to their property? Possibly. This gets a little complicated with the way that we're regulated as a utility. I am still going back and forth with legal on this because this was an idea that we had. And as a resource to list all of the program partners that have signed up. So that is a TBD. We're still working through some legal questions on that aspect of it. That's a great question. Does anybody else have any questions in the chat? So based off of what we discussed today, would you be interested in enrolling in the evolution program through Oncor? Is this something that you think that your fleet would be interested in or your company would be interested in partnering with us on? Yes, hands up. Great. Thanks, Frank. I look forward to talking to you about our partnership. All right. Well, if nobody has any more questions for me, I guess I'm going to turn it back over to Jared. Please feel free to call me if you have any questions. We can send out my cell phone number. We can send out my email. So everybody on the call has my contact information. So if you just need to reach out and talk about something, just give me a call and we'll go from there. It was a pleasure introducing Evolution to everybody today, and I really appreciate the opportunity, and I'm looking forward to kicking off this program. Thank you so much.
Jennifer and Josh, before we close down the Zoom meeting, can you put your contact information in the chat for everyone?
Sure. I'm sorry. To everyone. Okay, that's my name and my phone number and my email address if anybody needs to contact me, and Josh is going to put his information in there.
While Josh is doing that, Jennifer, I have one more question. Y'all are kicking off this fleet partnership portal next week-ish. And then do you have any sort of idea at this point, like how long you're going to keep this program open? Is it something where you're thinking 3 years from now, it will no longer be needed? And this is kind of a short-term thing, or what kind of outlook do y'all have?
My initial thought is that this is going to be a several year program, especially since, in our service territory, we're in a little bit in the infancy, especially in the medium heavy duty adoption, which is kind of exciting for us because we're almost able to build the pipe before the water gets turned on, which I appreciate. And that's kind of how I'm approaching it, is I'm really trying to set up the foundation for what the customers are going to be wanting and be really agile in the way that this program is built. It absolutely will not look the same even in 12 months. So I'm really this is where we're starting, and it's going to grow into something that the customer is going to need. And I'm going to let the customer kind of shape and dictate to us what that needs to be. So I think it's gonna grow into possibly a department. It's gonna grow into a big program to make sure that our fleet customers are happy and satisfied with our partnership. Any other questions? Thanks everybody for coming in person. Thank you everybody for joining online. I'm gonna turn it back over to Jared. Thank you.
Thank you, Jennifer and Josh. Great presentations. So that's everything we have for all today. For those of you in person, please make sure to sign in if you haven't. We also have T-shirts and other items in the back for you to grab on your way out. And then also look for a follow-up email in the next week or so from us with the information you saw today. And then maybe we can time it after the portal goes live over at Oncor. And so y'all can be aware that the portal is now live. And we'll send that to everyone who registered in the next week or so. Other than that, I think we're good to go. And thank you all for joining us.